Hello and welcome to Zero to Professional Web Developer in one day. I will be taking you from knowing nothing about programming to being an employable web developer by the end of this video. So the first thing that you'll need is a text editor. What we'll be preparing first is an HTML file, which is a text file with some markup that tells the browser what information it needs to display to render a web page. So if you're on Windows, you can follow along on Notepad++, and if you're using a real operating system, you can follow along in Vim. You may use another text editor, but people will not think that you're as good if you use something else. You could use Emacs if you're comfortable being contrarian. So let's get started. So the first thing that we'll need to create is an index.html. I've got one prepared here. The basics of an HTML file are structured as follows. There's a head tag. You'll notice the tags begin with the labeled braces and the brace slash to close. So the head is for the metadata, body is for the data. So our first tag here is a header with a title. And this is what it looks like displayed. Now, next obvious step. What if you want this to be a different color? So an important thing to remember is that HTML is just for semantic labeling of data. When you want to change the aesthetics, usually you would use something called a cascading style sheet. It's a common misconception that this is acceptable. Using a cascading style sheet, depending on how you've got your website configured, could result in a separate network request just for the aesthetics. It also doubles the amount, in this case, of bytes that we're delivering to our client, which is just disrespectful to our user to double the amount of bandwidth they have to consume just to get a different color when the same information is being transmitted. So instead of using CSS, what we're going to do is we're going to add some code into Firefox to handle our color scheme so that if someone already has Firefox, they don't have to download our color scheme because they'll already have it in the code of the binary that they're running. So where we're going to put it in Firefox is the Servo parallel rendering engine, parallel browser engine here. So you can find it on GitHub. You can git clone it here. So I've got a checkout prepared, and the money spot that we want to edit here to get our website to work is in components/canvas/webgl paint thread. And if you hit line 200, you'll see here in this match statement, we need to add another match pattern. So this pattern is for our URL. So this will depend on what browser what domain you're serving your website from. So mine is webdev.0to-pro.tutorial. That's a new top-level domain. They distribute ownership on the blockchain. So in here, if we match this pattern, we're going to set title.style to red, which is of course a global constant in the styling engine for the CSS color red. So once you have written that, you should see, if you load it in Firefox with the new build, that the title is actually red. But as you can see if you refresh this a few times, you notice it's not as fast as it could be, and you want a good relationship with your users. So what we're going to do here is actually start a little bit lower, because we're currently our server is just our file system, but file systems are bogged down by all sorts of things like address space randomization in the operating system, and it has to wait for I/O. So from the disk, so the operating system has to pull the disk to get the file and whatnot. And it's even worse over a network, of course. So what we're going to do is eliminate the disk.io, and we're actually going to write our own kernel to serve this. So this part is a bit involved, but basically what we have to do is write assembly to prepare the processor to run our program, which will hold in memory our web page and serve it. So in order to fully accomplish this, we need to write a bootloader, which I have here. I will put a link in the description, and you can use mine if you're on x86-64, which is the bootloader that I wrote for this tutorial. If you're writing for an ARM machine, you'll need to look up the ARM manual on your own. And OSDev is a good wiki to work with when doing this. So basically, here we need to set up a stack for x86-64, and then we need to transition between the different modes. x86-64 is a very old instruction set architecture, so you have to boot up through some legacy modes, and then if you only have to go through real and then protected mode for the 32-bit instruction set, but if you're trying to get into 64-bit, then you have to do an extra step to get into long mode, which involves some bit shifting and whatnot, but you can figure it out. And then once you've set that up and you have a program that you can run on the bare metal and just serve your page, then we can load it from here, and you'll see that this is so fast, so much faster than before. It's almost, the load times are almost imperceptible. So the last thing that we need to cover is JavaScript. There are some things that you simply can't do by hacking code into Firefox and HTML on their own. Sometimes you need JavaScript, such as if you want to make a monkey dance on your screen on the HTML page. That's actually the purpose of the JavaScript language is to make monkeys dance on static web pages. But I think the primary takeaway is the following. So JavaScript has this concept of, well, it acknowledges the concept of types. Most programming languages have types. JavaScript acknowledges these, and then it looks in a different direction. So this is a string called a string with the content 0, and this is some numeric type with the number 0. And let's compare an empty string and 0 are also right. So let's well, there's not really much not really much I can do with that. I don't know why anyone would use this.